There is a pandemic of fake outrage in sports these days because Bam Adebayo scored 83 points in regulation, the most in an NBA game that has actually happened. And the most popular reaction to this is that it was unethical. It's no coincidence that NBA greats who watched the game, like Donovan Mitchell on X or Damian Lillard on the Blazers broadcast or Giannis Antetokounmpo, had nothing but respect for this performance, but fans who only tuned in for the last couple of minutes were upset about Kobe's record finally falling. So let's bring out the tape and talk about the truth of a game that I had the privilege to witness from start to finish. For context, entering this game, the Miami Heat were super shorthanded. Both of their all-star guards, Tyler Hero and Norm Powell, were out. Andrew Wiggins was out. And Miami's only NBA-level backup big, Kel'el Ware, was also out. If you followed any Miami Heat basketball this season, this roster is not nearly as deep as some of their recent contending squads, and in particular, Bam has had some of the most alarming on-off court splits in the NBA recently. Essentially, Miami's been a really good team when he is on the court, but when he is off, they have been horrible, and that included a recent loss to the Utah Jazz, who are literally trying to lose themselves. So the fact that Bam had to be and was more aggressive was not necessarily a surprise. And yes, the Wizards have obviously been one of the worst teams in defense in the league on the season, but no player had scored 50 on the season against them yet, and their best player, Alex Sarr, was active. The highest scoring performances by big men this season with Sarr active: Giannis with 37, Giannis with 33, and Karl Anthony Towns with 33. And oh, by the way, this Wizards team has beaten the Detroit Pistons outright, and in their very next game, they took the Orlando Magic to overtime. And for Bam, it all started in the first quarter when he scored 31 points, which included 5 for 8 from 3, and very notably, drew 2 early personal fouls on Alex Sarr, 2 of the several foul calls in this game that were officiated correctly, as Bam just dominated Sarr on the first step due to his superior speed for foul number 1, and then too much skill, he isolates, pump fakes Kobe style, and draws an obvious number 2. Overall, it was the second most first quarter points by a player in NBA history, and included a 5-minute span where he scored 21 points. Then came the second quarter, and in standard fashion, Bam gets his break for 5 minutes, but in that span, Miami being not just shorthanded, but also a poor defensive team with Bam off the floor, they allowed 12 Wizards points and did not gain any ground on their lead. Still just a 14-point game, Bam checks back in, and with it, Alex Sarr checks back in, and at the same time, the domination just continues. He hits the offensive glass and Sarr wraps him up, foul number 3, still playing to win the game while down many key rotation players. The Heat are still only up 14 at halftime. They've blown bigger leads to bad teams. This is still not a blowout. Meanwhile, Bam has 43 at halftime, and if you want to consider discrediting anything up to this point, here is the list of every player to have 40 plus at halftime since 1996. What I find most notable on this list is that Bam is actually a rare instance of the 40 mark getting surpassed pre-halftime despite playing less than 20 minutes. And from watching the game, what I find most notable that nobody seems to bring up is that Miami's double-digit lead is not possible without Bam's elite defense, which will always be his number one attribute. He was causing deflections, switching 1 through 5, protecting the rim, and as he often does for this Miami Heat team, he was covering for his teammates' defensive errors and weaknesses. I don't think many people outside the NBA realize or appreciate just how difficult it is to be an elite two-way player on any given night. It's something that Damian Lillard brought up when he was asked about this game because he knows firsthand how much stamina it takes to even do one at a high level, let alone both. And the efficiency and aggressive mentality to score didn't end there for Bam because, like many poor teams, the Wizards struggled to make adjustments at halftime. The primary reason why is because Bam Adebayo's number one priority on offense has always and will continue to be making the right play, which includes passing out of double teams and passing up on decent shots for himself to look for great shots for the team. Because Washington was still turning the ball over on offense, partly because of Bam's elite defense, and because they were sending a lot of one-on-one matchups to him, headlined by Anthony Gill and company, Bam had no signs of halftime cooling him off because he quickly got to the 50 mark in just 25 minutes. Sounds pretty damn ethical to me. Meanwhile, this is when the fouls by the Wizards started to pile up and get more egregious than ever, not because the free throws were given to Bam, but because he earned them. One of the most common arguments about this performance was that because he had a high number of free throws, that he didn't earn buckets. This is probably the most idiotic thing you can say about the game of basketball, and this game was a prime example of it, because not only was every single foul called on Bam correctly officiated, but there were actually several instances where he got held or pushed, and the fouls that were there just weren't called. While I cannot show you every single foul call in this game in this video, Heat reporter Brady Hawk posted a thread on X doing just that, and I would recommend seeing it because it is a complete exhibition of Bam Adebayo's skill on display. From the opening tip of the game, Bam saw single coverage against defenders that were outright inferior to him and decided to fry them. And guess what? When undisciplined defenders who lack strength or foot speed are getting cooked, they tend to start hacking. And this was an exhibition of a star player putting the league on notice that if you give me single coverage and if you aren't disciplined defensively, I will run up buckets on you. And oh, by the way, I'm one of the league's best two-way players, so I will turn defense and offense in transition as well. To this point, not only is absolutely nothing unethical about a single point that was scored in this game, but also, speaking of efficiency, it was tied for the most points through 3 quarters of an NBA game, barring Wilt. And with 62 points being the new Heat franchise record, we've now arrived at the 4th quarter, and at the start of this period, Miami was up 16. Now, standardly, would Bam be in the game to start the 4th quarter playing every minute of the 3rd already? Probably not, but is it reasonable to say that Bam would have sat out the entire 4th quarter in normal circumstances? Also, no, because they haven't the whole season because of exactly what we just talked about. The Miami Heat have been mediocre this season without Bam on the floor, and in this game, they were extra shorthanded as they hunt for the 5 or 6 seed in the Eastern Conference. In fact, here is Bam Adebayo staying in the game against the Wizards up 30 in the 4th quarter just last month. So Spo leaving in starters for extended runs to seal a win is nothing new. And what do you know, the 4th quarter started exactly how the 1st quarter did, with more Bam Adebayo dominance, as the period opens up with an isolation move to the rack where he was hacked after a blow-by, and then a 3 off an off-screen, as the Wizards are still allowing him to cook them without any hard double teams. And with 10 minutes to go, Bam Adebayo, being the player that he is still making the right play by swinging the rock when a man is open as he picks up a pair of assists on back-to-back Heat buckets, playing the game the right way instead of ball hogging. Some might even say that's quite ethical. And with 8 minutes to go, there were actually a few plays where Bam didn't get involved at all, and the Heat just continued to make the right play, even if that meant that Bam didn't touch the ball. And now, for the first time in this ballgame, the energy starts to shift. With under 4 minutes to go, Bam gets an and one with perfect position in the post, as both teams are still playing regular basketball, and this free throw would then get him to 77 points. Immediately after this, the Heat had a timeout to challenge a call, and this is approximately when TV networks started buzzing about this game, and everything related to the perception of this performance was about to change. And it was all started by the Wizards themselves, not Bam or the Heat, as watch what Washington does with Bam already at 77 points. They know the situation and immediately start sending 2 to 3 bodies at Bam just so he can't catch the ball. And with Keyshawn Johnson eventually touching the ball, they intentionally foul to avoid Bam Adebayo having the chance to touch the ball and get a point. But it was at this point, with Bam Adebayo already at 79 points, that Eric Spoelstra, for the first time in this game, calls for some gamesmanship to get Bam a couple of extra possessions for the milestone that was around the corner. And it just keeps getting more and more egregious this point with the Wizards, because they're now sending 3+ bodies at Bam at all times, even on inbounds. Ladies and gentlemen, this is no longer basketball, and the reason is not the Heat, it is the Wizards head coach Brian Keefe. That intentional foul on Keyshawn Johnson then triggered a response by the Heat, which was to intentionally miss to try to get Bam Adebayo another possession, and moments later Bam did get the 4 extra points he needed to stand alone in NBA history. For reference, off the Wilt 100 ball, Bam 83 ball, and Kobe 81 ball, nobody actually had fewer 4th quarter points than Bam Adebayo. And now that the entire game has been recapped, what could your complaint toward the Heat or Bam Adebayo possibly be? Is it that his overall efficiency from the field to end his stat line wasn't quite as elite as Luka Doncic's was when he had the 70 ball? Because Bam was having one of the most efficient scoring games through 3 quarters until those percentages got docked very late in the game as he was emptying the clip, and he was still playmaking deep into that fourth quarter. And by the way, in a rare game of 40-plus field goal attempts, Bam was actually one of the more efficient ones in recent history. Is it that he set a record in free throw attempts and you think the whistle aided him? Because that can easily be disproven with the tape, since every single foul that was actually called was actually a foul. And if you're mad at the Wizards for being so incompetent that they had to foul to stop damage at the rim, I have news for you, because the Orlando Magic were their next opponent and Washington took them to overtime on the road. If it was that easy, it would have been done before. Is the issue that he stayed in the game for more additional playing time, specifically for the record? Because boys and girls, I have news for you. Every single record-chasing performance in sports history had some engineered manipulation to maximize the chance that the record was broken. In the NFL, players often pass the ball to break records or meet contract incentives during kneel-down situations. Those are for milestones and aren't ethical football. In the NBA, players stay in during blowouts every day when they're close to a milestone. And in fact, in Wilt's 100 game, his team was letting the opposing Knicks score in the fourth quarter just so he could get the ball back and get fed. In Kobe's 81-point game, he had 13 of the Lakers' last 17 field goal attempts and all 13 of their free throw attempts in the fourth quarter to get to 81, all while seeing single coverage as opposed to Bam, who had to deal with much more physical pressure. But hey, you don't see me calling Kobe's game unethical, right? Is your complaint that the first 79 points of the game were normal, but he set the record with his last 4 points to pass Kobe in an unethical manner because that wasn't basketball? Well, tell that to the Wizards, who chose to make the first move by intentionally triple teaming and fouling Keyshawn Johnson to prevent an event that they actually still couldn't stop. All of these are just excuses for the fact that you did not watch the game at all, or you have become so much of a hater that you'd rather rewrite history than enjoy it. I get it, records are meant to be broken, and you were upset that it wasn't your favorite player that accomplished it. But from a perspective of an NBA fan that got to watch one of the greatest individual games of all time, it couldn't have happened to a better player in person. Someone whose screening, defensive versatility, and off-the-court leadership has been a driving force for the Miami Heat for several years, and someone who is not only respected in his locker room, but also by all of his peers, someone with zero controversies in his professional career, someone that was drafted to be a defense and lob guy, and now he's one of the more prolific scorers in the NBA. And to top it all off, this was arguably the most complete offensive bag ever displayed in an NBA game, because it featured every single kind of bucket the game of basketball has to offer. If you can't respect it, maybe Kevin Durant was right, and you probably just don't like basketball enough. And if you're still not satisfied, and you just need a reason to hate, you can lick my nuts!